I'm lying here staring at the ceiling again. It's 3:14 a.m. I know because I checked. Twice. The third time I told myself I wouldn't look, and then I looked anyway. The way you do when you already know something is wrong and you keep checking just to confirm the thing you already confirmed. I have work tomorrow. I have a presentation tomorrow. I have a life tomorrow that requires me to be functional and professional and all the things I have always been without effort, without even having to try. And right now, I cannot remember how any of that works. Because she texted me at 11:47. That's it. That's the whole crisis. A text. 11 words. She texted me 11 words, and now it's been 3 hours. And I am still here with my phone face down on the nightstand. Like if I can't see the screen, maybe I can stop thinking about what she said. I keep telling myself it doesn't mean what I think it means. I keep telling myself I'm reading into it, that I'm tired, that I've been under a lot of stress lately, and stress does things to people, distorts things, makes ordinary moments feel heavier than they are. And this is one of those moments. This is ordinary. She is ordinary. What I'm feeling is ordinary, and I just need to sleep. I need to sleep. I close my eyes, and I see the way she looked at me this afternoon. The way her eyes dropped to the table for exactly 1 second before she answered my question. The way she said my name, Joan, just Joan, nothing else, but the way she said it, like she was trying it out, like she was deciding something while saying it. I open my eyes. The ceiling is the same ceiling it was 3 minutes ago. Nothing has changed. I am 31 years old. I have a good job. I have a good apartment. I have a life I built carefully and deliberately, and without leaving much room for things I couldn't control. And I cannot explain why right now, at 3 a.m, thinking about a woman I have known for 8 months feels like the most dangerous thing I have ever done. I'm not someone who loses sleep over people. I have never been that person. I am the person who goes to bed at 10:30 and wakes up at 6 and runs 3 miles before anyone in this city has had their first cup of coffee. I am the person who is fine, who has always been fine, who will be fine. Mila Hargrove is the richest woman in Claremont, Ohio. She became that last year, when her grandmother's company passed to her and she walked into the boardroom of Hargrove Industries at 34 years old, in a gray blazer, and quietly, methodically began changing everything. I watched the news coverage. Everyone did. It wasn't the money that made people watch. It was the way she stood at that podium and said simply, "I know what this company needs, and I'll do it." She said it like it wasn't a declaration, like it was just the next thing on the list. I thought, that must be a very simple, very clean way to live. And then she walked into the volunteer center where I spend every Thursday evening, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and asked if she could help sort the food bank donations because she'd heard they were short-staffed. And someone introduced us, and she shook my hand, and I thought, she has the kind of eyes that make you feel like you said something interesting even when you didn't say anything yet. That was 8 months ago. And now it is 3 a.m, and I am thinking about a text I won't let myself read again because if I read it again, I will have to admit that I know exactly what it means. I know exactly what it means. I close my eyes. Her voice. The way she says Joan. The way she tilted her head this afternoon when I was talking, and I lost my thought completely, mid-sentence, just lost it, and she waited. She just waited, like she had all the time in the world for whatever I was going to say, like whatever it was, she already knew it would be worth hearing. Nobody does that. Nobody has ever done that to me. I am not supposed to feel this. That's the part I keep running into. I'm not supposed to feel this. And for most of the last 8 months, I have been very successfully convincing myself that I don't. That what I feel is friendship, admiration, the specific kind of warmth you have for someone who is genuinely good, genuinely present, genuinely kind in a way that doesn't perform itself. But tonight, she said 11 words, and I have been awake for 3 hours, and I think I have to stop lying to myself. At least here. At least now. At 3 in the morning when no one can see me. I think I have to admit what this is. If you want to hear uncensored, too hot for YouTube stories, check out my Patreon in the description. The beginning was simple. I want to be clear about that because when I look back now, everything is colored by what came later, and it's easy to let that rewrite the early months into something they weren't. It wasn't complicated at first. It was just Thursday evenings, the volunteer center on Cedar Street, the smell of canned goods and cardboard boxes, and a coffee machine that someone had donated that made coffee only marginally better than no coffee at all. I started volunteering there 2 years ago after my therapist suggested it, and I thought, correctly, that she was right, that I had built myself a very efficient life with very few gaps in it, for anything that didn't have a purpose, and that sometimes purpose needed to be given freely to count. So I showed up on a Thursday and I sorted boxes and I talked to people and it was good. It was genuinely good. I kept coming back. And then Mila showed up. I didn't know who she was at first. Or I knew the name. Everyone in Claremont knew the name Hargrove. But the name didn't connect to the person in front of me immediately. She was tall. That's what I noticed. Taller than I expected from someone standing with that kind of quiet in her body. Like height and stillness were contradictory, and she'd resolved them without effort. She had her hair pulled back loose, a few pieces escaping, and she was holding a clipboard that had been handed to her approximately 40 seconds ago, and she was looking at it like it was a problem she was already halfway through solving. "You must be Joan," she said. She already knew my name. I found out later that Sandra, who runs the center, had told her I'd be the best person to show her the intake system. At the time, it just sounded like she'd done her research, and something about that, the fact that she'd prepared, that she'd walked in already knowing the name of the person she'd be working with, struck me as exactly the kind of person she probably was. "That's me," I said. She held out her hand. Her grip was firm and brief, and when she let go, she was already looking at the clipboard again, not in a dismissive way, but in the way of someone whose attention is a real thing, a finite resource, and when she redirects it, you can tell. She redirects it completely. "Walk me through it," she said. So I did. For an hour, I walked her through the intake system, the sorting process, the temperature requirements for the perishable donations, the spreadsheet we used to track what went where. She asked 3 questions the whole time, specific questions, not the questions of someone performing interest, but the questions of someone who has genuinely been listening and wants to fill in the one gap remaining. When we finished, she said, "Thank you." That was clearer than what they emailed me. And then she went to the other side of the room and started sorting cans in complete silence, and I went back to my station, and we didn't talk again for the rest of that evening. She came back the following Thursday, and the one after that. For the first 2 months, she was just someone I worked alongside. We'd exchange logistics. What station needs help? Where the new donations from the grocery store partnership were going? Whether the coffee machine was dying, a debate we had several times, arriving at no consensus. The machine continuing to function, despite all evidence suggesting it shouldn't. "I think it's spite," she said one evening, looking at it. "The machine?" "Spite is underrated as a survival mechanism." I laughed. It surprised me, the laugh and the comment both. She almost smiled. Not quite. Her mouth moved in a way that was adjacent to a smile, like she was saving the full version for something she hadn't decided to trust yet. That was the first time I thought, she is interesting, not beautiful. Not yet. Not in the way that became a problem later. Just interesting. The way a person can be interesting when they're not trying to be anything for you, just existing next to you, and the existence has weight. Over the months that followed, the logistics conversations started lasting longer. We'd finish sorting and keep talking. About the city. She'd grown up in Claremont. I'd moved here 4 years ago for a job with the County Housing Authority, and she asked me questions about what it looked like from the outside, what I noticed that people who'd grown up here had stopped seeing. About the volunteer center. She was thinking about structural improvements, had ideas, wanted to know what people on the ground actually needed. About work sometimes. About nothing in particular, other times. I learned things, that she hated talking on the phone. That she was better at listening than she was at small talk, but that she didn't mind small talk when it had room in it for something real. That she took her coffee black and had opinions about it. That she had grown up in this city as Hargrove's granddaughter and worn that the way you wear a coat in August. Always present, always slightly wrong, always something she was aware of in a way that other people weren't. People treat you differently when they know, she said once. Know what? About the money, the family, any of it. She paused. I started coming here partly because nobody asks me what the family is going to do about the zoning ordinance while I'm sorting canned peaches. Until now, I said. She looked at me. I would never ask you about the zoning ordinance while sorting canned peaches, I said. I have standards. That time she smiled. The full version. It was brief and it changed her whole face, and she looked away immediately after, like she'd done something accidental. I didn't think about it. I noted it the way you note something pleasant. The light through a window at a certain hour, a song you'd forgotten you knew. And then I filed it somewhere, and moved on. I moved on because we were friends. That was what we were. Two women who spent Thursday evenings in a volunteer center on Cedar Street. And friendship was the right word, the correct word, the only word I was reaching for. I wasn't reaching for anything else. My friend Cassie, who I've known since graduate school, and who has always had the specific talent of saying the true thing before I've located it myself, visited in October and came with me to the center one Thursday because she wanted to see where I spent my time. She spent the evening watching Mila. Afterward, on the walk to dinner, she didn't say anything for half a block. Then she said, So, I said, how long has that been happening? What? She looked at me. Joan. We're friends, I said. Okay, she said. Like she was agreeing to a language we both knew was a stand-in for another language neither of us was ready to speak yet. I changed the subject. She let me. That's what good friends do. They let you change the subject while making sure you know they noticed. That was October. It is now the following July, and it is 3 a.m, and I have been lying to myself for 8 months in progressively less convincing ways. The beginning was simple. That's the thing about beginnings. They're only simple in retrospect, from the inside of something you never saw coming, looking back at the entrance that had no sign on it, that looked like just a door. There's a specific kind of change that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive as a moment of clarity or a sudden awareness. It arrives the way water changes the shape of rock, incrementally, indistinguishably, until one day you look at the rock and it's different, and you can't point to the single day it became so. That was how it happened with me. November. The center organized a fundraising dinner, a nice one, at the Community Arts Building downtown, and Mila had helped plan it, and I had helped plan it, and we showed up separately and found ourselves at the same table, because that was how the seating had been arranged by Sandra, with what I realize now was very deliberate intent. Sandra sees things. Sandra has been running that center for 16 years, and she sees things before they are things. Mila was wearing something different from the flannel shirts and practical clothes I'd only ever seen her in. Not formal. She doesn't do formal in the way that people who grew up with money sometimes don't, because they don't feel like they need to prove anything with clothes, but composed. A dark blouse, her hair down. And there was a moment early in the evening when she was in conversation with someone across the table, and she laughed at something they said, a real laugh, head tilting back slightly, and I was watching her. And then she turned and caught me watching her, and I looked away, and when I looked back she was still looking at me. Just for a second. 2 seconds. And then she looked back at the other person and continued the conversation. I told myself, it didn't mean anything. People make eye contact at dinner parties. It's normal. It is literally the normal thing that happens at dinner parties. But I spent the rest of that evening more conscious of where she was in the room than I have ever been of anyone. And I don't know when that started being true. December. We had developed a habit. Nothing formal, nothing decided, just the kind of thing that happens through repetition. Of walking to the coffee place 2 blocks from the center after Thursday evenings. It happened maybe half the time. Depended on how late it was, how cold, what either of us had going on the next morning. But when we walked slowly, and the conversations were different from the ones we had in the center. Quieter. More personal. She told me about the transition at Hargrove Industries, about the board members who had been skeptical, and some who still were, about the responsibility of it, not the status, not the power, the responsibility. The actual weight of several hundred jobs and a city that had grown up partly in relation to that company. She talked about it without drama, matter-of-factly, the way she talked about most things, but I could hear the places where the matter-of-fact voice cost her something. Do you ever want to just not be that? I asked once. The Hargrove. Just be Mila. She was quiet for a moment, long enough that I started to wonder if I'd said something wrong. Yes, she said, and I also love it. Both things are true, and they're both always true. And I've mostly made peace with that. She said it so simply. Both things are true. I've mostly made peace with that. I thought about it for days afterward. The way she could hold contradiction without needing to collapse it into one thing. The way she seemed to have made her terms with herself. Not perfectly, not without cost, but genuinely. That was when it started to shift. Not because of what she said, but because of the way I caught myself listening for it. The way I'd find my thoughts returning, midweek, to something she'd said on Thursday. Not because I was analyzing it, because I liked the sound of it in my head. Her voice, specifically. The particular cadence of it, the slight pause before she says something she means. I started noticing that I was noting what I was wearing before Thursday evenings in a way I hadn't been before. I didn't change anything. I didn't stand in front of my closet deliberately choosing, but I noticed the noticing, which meant something was already happening below the level I was willing to look at. January was cold. One of those Januaries that doesn't apologize for itself. Ice on the sidewalks. Wind that made walking the 2 blocks to the coffee place a commitment. The kind of commitment that requires a decision. And one Thursday, Mila and I walked out of the center into the cold, and I pulled my coat tighter, and she said without preamble, "My car is around the corner. There's a place on 5th that makes good tea. You don't have to walk in this." I said yes. It was the first time we'd been in her car, which sounds like nothing and was nothing. It was a car. She drove. We went to the tea place on 5th, but being in the enclosed space of a car with her, with the heat on, and the world reduced to the 2 of us, and the sound of the windshield wipers and whatever music was on low. She has specific taste in music, soft folk things I hadn't expected. I was aware of her in a new way. Aware of how close we were. Aware that her hands were on the steering wheel and her profile was right there, 3 feet away, and I was looking at the road ahead, but I was also, in my peripheral vision, looking at her. I ordered chamomile. She ordered something with ginger. We stayed for almost 2 hours, and when she drove me home, we sat in the car in front of my building for another 40 minutes, talking about nothing specific, nothing important, and I said goodnight eventually, because it was almost 11, and I could feel something I couldn't name pressing against the inside of my chest, and I didn't trust what I might say if I stayed. I went upstairs and sat at my kitchen table and stared at nothing. I did not allow myself to think about what I was feeling. That's a skill, the deliberate not thinking. I have always had it. The ability to decide that something is in a box and keep the box closed through force of focus, through redirecting attention, through giving myself other things to attend to. It's practical, usually. It has served me well. But the thing about that kind of not thinking is that the not thinking itself is a form of thinking, and you can't fully close the box on something if part of your mind is always standing by the box making sure it stays closed. February, March. Spring came. We stayed Thursdays and after Thursdays. We texted, sometimes, not constantly, not the kind of contact that would have been obviously significant, but enough. Enough that her name appearing on my phone had a different quality than other names appearing on my phone. A small separate weight. She came to an event at the Arts Center that my office helped organize. We do community engagement around housing and economic development, and this was a neighborhood planning session, not the kind of thing anyone would attend by choice. But she was there because her company had community investment interests in the neighborhood. I saw her across the room and felt my whole body reorganize itself slightly, the way you brace for something. She saw me. She crossed the room. "You're here," she said. "I work here," I said. "More or less." "I know," she said. "I mean, it's good to see you." And the way she said it, not with performance, not as small talk, like she meant it in a specific, directed way that she wasn't trying to dress up. I said, "It's good to see you too." And we looked at each other for a moment too long, and then we both looked elsewhere because the too long was there, acknowledged, neither of us acknowledging it. That evening, I called Cassie. "I think I'm having a problem," I said. "How long?" "I don't know. Maybe since November." "Joan," she said. Not as a reproach, more like, "I know, I saw, I've been waiting." "I don't know what to do with this," I said. "I know," she said. "But can I ask you something?" "Okay." Does she feel the same way? I was quiet. "You've spent 8 months with this person," Cassie said. "What does your gut say?" I didn't answer. But in the space of not answering, something moved that I had been holding very still. I am very good at carrying weight. I want that stated clearly before I tell you what the next few months looked like, because I don't want you to think I was falling apart. I wasn't. I got up every morning at 6, and I ran my 3 miles, and I went to work, and I did the job well. I have always done the job well. And I went to book club with my neighbor Rachel on the second Wednesday of every month, and I visited my mother in Columbus twice. And I was fine, functionally and visibly, and in every way that counts to the outside world. But I was carrying it. The weight of what I felt and wasn't saying, which is its own kind of heavy. Not the heavy of grief or loss, which announces itself and at least has the dignity of being seen, but the heavy of something you're choosing not to name because naming it would require you to do something with it, and you don't know yet what the doing would cost. April was when I started to understand the cost of proximity. There's a difference between being near someone you like and being near someone you're trying not to want. The first is pleasant. The second is a test you are constantly taking, in real time, without knowing what grade you're receiving. Mila and I were meeting every Thursday still. The after-center walks had become regular. The tea place on 5th was something we called our place by now, without either of us having established that it was, without conversation, without agreement, just through the gravity of repetition. We'd sit across from each other for hours, and the time would do that thing it does sometimes where it doesn't accumulate the way it should. She has this habit when she's thinking. She tilts her head slightly, and her eyes go a little distant, not absent, more like she's solving something interior before bringing it back out. I had cataloged this. I had cataloged it without meaning to, the way you catalog the things you look at often. One Thursday in April, we were talking about a documentary she'd watched. Environmental policy, something she'd been reading about in relation to her company's sustainability commitments, but she'd found it personal in a way she hadn't expected. And she said, "I think the thing that stayed with me was this one researcher talking about legacy, about how the decisions we make now become the inheritance of people who had no say in them. And I thought about my grandmother, about what she built. Whether it was made with that in mind, whether she ever thought about it that way. She stopped. Did she? I asked. I don't know. I never asked her, and now I can't. She looked at her hands around her mug. That's the thing about conversations you assume you'll have eventually. The eventually runs out. I watched her. The stillness of her, the way she could be sad without performing it, without requiring anything from me in response to it. I said, "She built something you wanted to make better. Maybe that's the answer." She looked up. What? The question of whether she thought about it. You're thinking about it. You walked into that boardroom and you changed the direction. That means she built something worth changing direction in. That's its own kind of answer. She looked at me for a long moment. Joan, she said. Just that. Just my name. I felt it in my sternum. The way she said it. Like my name was a period at the end of something. The thing she was saying instead of something else. Thank you, she said, finally. Quietly. I didn't say anything, I said. You said the right thing, she said. There's a difference. We sat in silence for a while after that. Not uncomfortable silence. Comfortable in the way that silence between two people can only be comfortable when both of them know they could fill it and are choosing not to, choosing to just exist in it together. And I thought, I could say something right now. I could say it right now and she would hear it. I thought that, clearly. For the first time that explicitly. And then I didn't say anything, because I was afraid of what came after. Not afraid of her response. The worst kind of afraid. The kind where you can't even locate what you're afraid of exactly. Where the fear is ambient and total and comes from no single direction. The fear of change. The fear of having named the thing and then having to live in the world where it was named, where it couldn't be put back in the box. I took my drive home that night and parked in front of my building for 10 minutes before going in. May, we got into a disagreement, not a fight, nothing dramatic, just a genuine difference of opinion about something we were helping to plan for the center, a community partnership Mila wanted to pursue that I thought was moving too fast. She thought I was being overly cautious. I thought she was underestimating the relational groundwork required. Neither of us was wrong exactly. What surprised me was how much it bothered me. Not the disagreement itself, the aftermath. The way I drove home with it rattling in me. Not anger, nothing like anger. Something more like the specific distress of having been at odds with someone whose alignment feels important to you in a way you can't fully justify. I texted her that night. I think I was too direct about the timeline concern. Sorry if it came across as dismissive. She replied almost immediately. You weren't dismissive. You were right to push back. I appreciate it. Then a pause. Then, I don't like disagreeing with you. I read that 3 times. Then I put my phone face down on the counter and washed the dishes. I don't like disagreeing with you. It could mean anything. It probably means what it would mean between any 2 friends, that the relationship matters, that friction in it feels different from friction elsewhere. That's what it probably means. That's almost certainly what it means. I went to bed at 10:30. June. Cassie came back for a visit, and this time she didn't beat around anything. You have to say something, she said. We were sitting on my back porch with wine and the kind of summer dusk that stays light longer than it should. The sky doing that thing where it goes pink and then stays pink, reluctant to become dark. I don't know what I would say, I said. The truth. The truth is enormous, I said, and potentially career-altering and friendship-altering, and I have been friends with this woman for 8 months, and I don't want to... Joan, I stopped. You're not sleeping, Cassie said. You think about her every day. You lit up when I mentioned her name 3 seconds ago, before you caught yourself. I'm not saying you have to do anything. I'm saying the weight of not doing anything is getting heavy enough that I can see it from the outside. She was right. I knew she was right. I knew it with the same clarity I knew other undeniable things. That the sky was still pink, and that the wine was almost gone, and that this conversation was the truest conversation I'd had in months. "What if she doesn't feel the same way?" I said. "Then you survive it," Cassie said. "You're not someone who doesn't survive things." "And what if she does?" Cassie was quiet for a moment. "Then you have to figure out what that means," she said. "And that's harder, but it's a good hard." I didn't say anything. We sat in the pink light until it became dark. July. The last 3 weeks before the text, before the 3 a.m. that I started this at. Those weeks were the sharpest. The weight had become specific and located. I could feel it in particular moments, when she touched my shoulder briefly passing behind my chair at the center, when she sent me an article about housing policy on a Wednesday afternoon, and the accompanying message said simply, "Thought of you," when she was talking to someone across the room, and I watched without meaning to. And she turned and found me watching, and we both looked away at exactly the same second, and I thought, we keep doing that. We keep doing that same thing. What does that mean? What does that mean? There's a kind of knowing that happens before you're ready to call it knowing, where your body understands something your mind is still debating, where every small thing, the way she remembers the specific thing I told her 2 months ago, the way she says my name like it means something to say it, the way she stays at the tea place until I'm the one who says I should probably go, is arriving as data that is being processed by something below my ability to intercept it. I was driving home from the center on a Thursday, the last Thursday in June, and the radio was on, and I wasn't listening to it, and out of nowhere. Not out of nowhere. Out of every place I'd been stuffing things for 8 months. I thought, I love her. Not I might. Not I think I could. I love her. And then I thought, okay. So that's what this is. I drove the rest of the way home in complete silence with the radio still on. I made dinner. I ate it. I sat at my kitchen table and let the thing be real for the first time. Just let it sit there in the room with me, without trying to cover it or correct it or argue it back into something manageable. I love her. It was terrifying. It was also, underneath the terror, the first time in months that I felt completely honest. That was June. In July, she texted me 11 words. We had been talking earlier that day, a normal Thursday, the center, the tea place, 2 hours of conversation that ranged from the logistics of the center's fall planning to her thoughts on a book she'd just finished to something funny that happened at a city council meeting she'd attended. Normal. Warm. Safe in the way things had become safe between us, which was also not safe at all. But I had learned to inhabit the contradiction the way she said she'd learned to hold hers. We said goodnight in the parking lot. She drove away first. I sat in my car for a moment, and then I drove home. At 11:47, my phone lit up. I still don't know what she meant exactly. I know what the words say. I know what my gut says they mean. But I also know that Mila Hargrove is not someone who says things carelessly, is not someone who reaches for a phone at 11:47 on a Thursday night without reason. The message said, "Today was good. I think I'm going to miss this. I'm going to miss this." Present tense. Future implication. The specific grammar of someone who is already standing at the edge of something and looking back. That was 11:47. It is now 3:14 a.m., and I am lying here knowing that she is somewhere in this city. In the house her grandmother left her on the east side, probably in whatever room she uses to be alone. And she sent me 11 words, and I am afraid, and I am awake, and I love her, and I don't know what she means by miss. But before we go any further, if you've been here this long, you know what kind of story this is. The kind that finds you right in the middle of your own unanswered questions. The kind that makes you sit with something you thought you'd put away. So if this is landing somewhere real for you, hit the like button right now. It takes 2 seconds, and it means I can keep bringing you stories like this one. And if you're not subscribed yet, subscribe and turn on the bell. That's the only way YouTube tells you when a new story goes up. Now I want to hear from you in the comments. I want to know, have you ever gotten a message from someone that said one thing and meant something else entirely? And you knew, in your gut you knew, but you couldn't bring yourself to answer. What did you do? Tell me. I read every single comment. And tell me what city you're watching from. I'll give you a heart. Okay, back to Joan. I answered the text the next morning. Not at 3 a.m. I had enough self-control for that, barely. I waited until 6:15, after my run, when I was back in my apartment, and the morning had made things feel slightly less like the inside of a fever dream. I sat at my kitchen table with coffee and my phone, and I typed and deleted 4 different responses before I landed on one. I wrote, "Why are you going to miss it?" It wasn't what I meant to say. I'd been aiming for something neutral, something that kept the temperature of things manageable. But what I actually typed was the question I actually had, and I looked at it for a minute, and I sent it. She replied in 20 minutes. I have a meeting in Chicago next week. Then I'll probably be traveling more than usual through the fall. I just wanted to say, before it all gets complicated, that I'm glad we're doing this. The Thursdays. Everything. I read it twice. Then I read it again. Then I sat very still. She was talking about schedule. She was talking about being busier. She was saying the ordinary thing people say to each other when their time is about to get more complicated. I appreciate this. Thank you for this. Normal. Warm. The thing a good friend would say. I wrote back, I'm glad too. And then I put my phone down and went to shower and got ready for work, and spent the entire 45-minute drive to the office turning the message over in my head like a stone, looking for the thing underneath it. That Friday I had a meeting in Columbus and I stayed the night at my mother's house. She made dinner. She always makes too much food when I visit, as if compensating for the distance between our visits with volume. And we sat at the kitchen table the way we used to when I was growing up, and she asked about work, about the city, about whether I'd been sleeping. You look tired, she said, not unkindly. I'm fine, I said. She looked at me over her water glass. My mother has the particular gift of being able to communicate volumes with a look without applying any pressure. She's not a pusher. She never has been. She asks. And if you don't answer, she holds the space open and moves the conversation elsewhere, and the question is still there, just patient. There's a person, she said. Not a question. Mom. You don't have to tell me, she said. I just wanted to name it so you know you don't have to carry it alone if you don't want to. I looked at my plate. She's a friend, I said. My mother said nothing. She's a really good friend, I said. And I think the friendship it's complicated now. It's gotten complicated. How long? A while. My mother refilled my water, set the pitcher down gently. Does she know? No, I said. And I'm not sure it's something Joan. I looked up. My mother looked at me. Really looked. The specific looking that mothers do that sees through the version of you that you present and finds the one underneath. And she said, You are very good at managing things. You always have been. But some things don't benefit from being managed. I drove home on Saturday morning. I spent the rest of that week in a state of deliberate distance from myself. Not drinking, not falling apart, just quiet, getting through, doing the work well, running my miles, sleeping enough, being present for other people in all the appropriate ways, the kind of week that looks fine from every angle and costs more than it should. And then on Thursday I went to the center. She was already there when I arrived. She was at the intake station, clipboard in hand, talking to a newer volunteer named Dana about the process, patient and clear the way she is. She looked up when I walked in. Her face did something. Nothing dramatic, just a shift, a small arrival of warmth. And she said, There you are. like she'd been waiting. "Here I am," I said. We worked alongside each other for 3 hours. We talked about the fall programming, about the new refrigeration unit the center had finally gotten funded, about something Dana had said that made both of us laugh at the same time, in that specific way that happens when two people have built enough shared context that the same things land for them. We walked to the tea place. We sat across from each other. And somewhere in the second hour, after the conversation had moved through several rooms, she said, in the middle of something else, not as a significant statement, "I missed Thursday last week. I had been in Columbus. We hadn't seen each other." "I missed it too," I said. She was quiet for a moment. I just missed being here," she said, carefully, like she was choosing the words with more attention than usual. The routine of it." "Me too," I said. And I looked at her, and she looked at me, and there was that thing again. That thing that had been happening for months. That elongated moment between us where neither of us was looking away, where the space between us was not empty, was anything but empty, was full of everything we were carrying. And I thought, I am so tired of carrying this. Not angrily, not in despair, just tired. The way you get tired of a weight that you've held for so long that you've stopped feeling it as separate from you, and then one day you put it down for a second by accident, and your body remembers what it felt like before, and you realize, I have been exhausted this whole time. I've just stopped knowing it. I said, "Mila." She looked at me, and I said, "Can I say something?" And she said very quietly, "Yes." I had not planned what came next. That's the thing I want you to understand. I had planned versions of it in my head for months, rehearsed it, revised it, decided it wasn't time, decided it would never be time. But in that moment there was no plan. There was just me and the weight I was finally setting down. "I think I've been pretending for a long time," I said. "That what I feel when I'm with you is just friendship. That the way I think about you, the way your name feels in my head on a Wednesday afternoon, the way I've been lying awake for months not letting myself finish thoughts, that all of that is just what friendship is. And I think I've been pretending because it was easier than the alternative." She hadn't moved. She was very still. "I'm not pretending anymore," I said. "I'm not asking you for anything. I just needed to stop lying to myself. And I realized I couldn't stop lying to myself without stopping lying to you." Silence. Not a cold silence, a held one. Like she was taking it in carefully, the way she takes things in, completely, before responding. "How long?" she said. I almost smiled. The same question my mother had asked. The same question Cassie had asked. "Since probably November," I said. "Maybe before that." She looked at her hands. "Joan," she said. "I know," I said. "I know this is... I don't know what this is. I don't know what you feel. You don't have to tell me right now." "No," she said. She stopped. She looked up. Her eyes were doing something I hadn't seen before, something that was not the controlled steadiness she usually kept. "I need to tell you something." I waited. I have also been pretending," she said. "For a while, because I've been here before with someone, and it ended in a way that cost me more than I knew how to pay. And I promised myself I wouldn't." She stopped again. "And then you were there. And you kept being there. And I kept finding reasons to be at the table you were at and to walk home the way you were walking home. And I told myself it was friendship. And I think part of me also knew that I was choosing it. Choosing to stay in that word because the other word was too much. The other word. What is the other word?" I said. She looked at me. You know what it is, she said. The tea place was full of other people, other conversations, other ordinary Thursday evenings. None of them were ours. None of them were this. I know, I said. I'm going to Chicago next week, she said. And then Boston. And then probably Dallas. The fall is going to be... She exhaled. I just want to be honest with you. I want to tell you what I feel. Because you were honest with me. And you deserve that. But I also need to tell you that I don't know what I can offer right now. I don't know if I have figured out how to... If I'm ready to... I'm not asking you to be ready for anything, I said. I know, she said, but I'm afraid that if I name what I feel, and then I'm not available the way you deserve, I'm afraid of what that does. There was something in the way she said it, something protective. Not of herself, of me. She was afraid of hurting me. She was afraid of naming the thing and then not being able to show up for it. I felt something shift in my chest. Not break. Shift. The specific feeling of a thing becoming true. I'm not fragile, I said. I know you're not, she said. That's not... She paused. You're one of the most whole people I know. I'm afraid of what it says about me. If I name this and then I can't. If I disappear into the next 6 months and you're here and I'm... Mila, I said. She stopped. I have been carrying this for 8 months, I said. I'm not asking you to have everything figured out. I'm just asking you to be honest about what you feel. That's all I came here to do tonight. She was quiet for a very long time. Then she said, I have felt, since probably earlier than November, something I haven't let myself feel for someone in a very long time. Because the last time I felt it, I made it small enough to survive, and I don't know if I know how to feel it at full size anymore. I heard every word of that, every individual word. Okay, I said. Okay, she said. Okay, I said. That's enough for right now. That's more than enough. We sat in the tea place for another hour. We talked about other things. Or we tried to, and the other things kept looping back, kept circling the thing we'd said, examining it from different angles. The thing was in the room now, real, named. It couldn't be unnamed. When we left, we stood on the sidewalk in the summer night air, and she said my name once more, and I said hers, and we didn't say the things we were both thinking, but they were there, between us, held. I drove home, and 2 days later, she left for Chicago. She was in Chicago for a week. She texted me twice, once to say the meeting had gone longer than expected, once to ask what I thought about something she'd read in an article she sent me, the kind of question that was really just a way of saying I'm thinking of you. I answered both. I didn't say more than she said. She came back on a Friday and we didn't see each other until the following Thursday, which was the last Thursday of July, which was, though neither of us knew it at the time, the last Thursday for a while. I knew something was different when I arrived at the center, and she was quieter than usual. Not cold. Mila is never cold, not with me, but inward, somewhere behind herself. She worked carefully, methodically, the way she works when something is occupying the part of her mind that usually goes to conversation. We didn't go to the tea place that night. We walked to her car together and she said, "Do you have time?" I said yes. We drove to the park on the east side, the one near her house, the one I had never been to before, a long park along a creek with wooden benches set back from the path. It was nearly 9. The sky was that particular dark blue that precedes real darkness, that hesitation color. She parked and we got out and walked without discussing it, without choosing a direction, just walked until we found a bench and sat down. Boston got longer, she said. How long? They want me there through September, possibly into October. A pause. There's a restructuring, a subsidiary, long story. My presence it matters more than it should for something like this. But it does. Okay, I said. And Dallas was confirmed, and there are 2 other things still in negotiation. She looked at the creek. I'm going to be mostly not here, for months. I absorbed that. I know, she said. I know the timing of this is... The timing has always been complicated, I said. Yes. She turned to look at me. And I want to say something about that. About what we said last week, at the tea place. I waited. I meant it, she said. I want you to know that. What I told you. It was real. It's real. I'm not walking that back. She paused. But I also meant what I said about not knowing what I can offer, and being away for months it's not the container I imagined for this. For what? She looked at me steadily. For whatever this is, she said. Whatever this could be. I felt the word could. Its careful conditional tense. The door left open and the frame of it at the same time. What do you want? I asked. She exhaled, slow and long, like she'd been holding that breath through Chicago and Boston and all the negotiations and the restructuring and the months of logistics. I want to be honest with you, she said. Always, whatever else. Okay. And I want us to not break this, what we have, by rushing into something that neither of us has the space to hold properly right now. By starting something and then being gone. I looked at the creek. The water moved steadily, dark in the dusk, catching pieces of the remaining light. A heron somewhere upstream, probably. The sound of the city muted by distance and trees. I think I understand, I said. Do you? She sounded like she genuinely wasn't sure. I think you're saying you feel what you feel, I said. And you're also saying you're afraid to start something you can't finish, that the timing doesn't match the thing. I paused. And I think that's real. I think that's honest. It doesn't mean what I feel isn't... I know, I said. I know it doesn't. We sat in silence. The kind of silence that is its own conversation. The kind I had learned over 8 months to be in with her. The kind that holds things instead of avoiding them. I thought about all the nights I had lain awake with the weight of this, all the weeks of not saying, of holding the box closed, of running 3 miles in the morning to give my body something to do with what my mind wouldn't let itself think. I thought about the tea place, and the word too much, and the specific way she'd said I have felt something I haven't let myself feel for someone in a very long time. I thought about what it would mean to wait, not the passive waiting of someone who has no choice, the chosen waiting, the kind where you know what you feel, and she knows what you feel, and there is an understanding that sits between you, not a promise, but a real thing, a thing that exists and has been named. I'm not going anywhere, I said. She turned. I'm here, I said. I'll be here, in this city, on Thursdays, or not Thursdays, or whenever. And what I feel isn't going anywhere either. I looked at her. I'm not asking you to do anything with that. I'm just telling you it's true. She looked at me for a long moment. In the near dark, her eyes were very clear. You know this is not a fair thing to put on you, she said. I know, I said. I'm putting it on myself. You're not asking me to. She looked away, looked at the creek. I don't know what the fall looks like, she said. I don't know what's on the other side of it. Neither do I said, but I know what's on this side of it. A long pause. I'm going to miss you, she said. Not this time like the text, not the careful grammar of someone standing at an edge. Just simply, directly, the true thing. "I'm going to miss you too," I said. We stayed on that bench until it was fully dark, until the creek was just a sound and the park was just a shape. And then she drove me home, and she pulled up in front of my building, and we sat in her car with the engine off for a few minutes, in the particular silence of two people who have said as much as they're going to say tonight, and are not yet ready to end the evening. I put my hand on the door handle, and then I said, "Hey." She looked at me. "Whatever the fall is," I said. "Whatever's on the other side of it, don't disappear." She nodded. Once. Definitely. The nod of someone who is deciding something and has decided. "I won't," she said. I got out of the car. I stood on the sidewalk and I watched her drive away, and I let myself feel the full weight of all of it. The everything we'd said. The everything we hadn't. The gap between what I wanted and what was possible right now. And it was heavy. It was genuinely heavy. But it was different from the weight I'd been carrying before. The old weight was the weight of something hidden. This weight was the weight of something real. Real things can be born. She left for Boston on a Tuesday. I know because she texted me a photo of an absolutely terrible airport coffee and the message, "This is why you make it at home." I wrote back, "Don't let spite be your only guide." She sent a laughing emoji. Then, "Talk soon. Talk soon." I held that. I held it the way you hold something small and specific when the rest of the thing is too large to hold all at once. Talk soon. It was not a promise, and it was not a declaration, and it was not enough, and it was everything that was available right now. I was teaching myself something in those weeks. Something I had not known I needed to learn. Not patience exactly. I have always had patience as a technical skill, the ability to wait things out, to manage timelines. This was different. This was the acceptance of uncertainty as the actual condition of things. Not the temporary condition, not the inconvenient interim before clarity arrives. The condition. The way things are. She texted sporadically through August, sometimes about work, sometimes something small, a building she saw that made her think of the housing project I'd mentioned, a sentence about missing the creek park. Once, at 10 at night from what she said was an empty conference room, just, "Are you good?" I wrote back, "Yes, are you?" She wrote, "Getting there." September came. October was approaching the way difficult things approach, visibly, gradually, and too fast. And I was still here, running my 3 miles, doing the job well, going to book club with Rachel, visiting my mother in Columbus, carrying the new weight, the real weight, the weight that was specifically shaped like Mila Hargrove and what we'd said in a park in the near dark in July. She called me once, not texted, called. A Tuesday evening in early September, late enough that it must have been even later for her on the East Coast. "I keep meaning to call," she said. Not as an apology, as a fact. "I know," I said. "It's been..." She paused. "It's been a lot." "I know," I said again. "I thought about what you said," she said. "On the bench, that you're not going anywhere." I waited. "I've been thinking about whether I deserve that," she said. "Whether I'm the person who should have someone waiting for me while I do. This." A pause. "While I'm being the kind of person I've been being. Unavailable. Buried." "You're doing your job," I said. "I'm always doing my job," she said. "That's partly the thing. I have always been very good at being unavailable in the ways that require me to call it commitment." I was quiet, hearing this. The particular honesty of it, the specific self-awareness that cost her something to say. "Mila," I said. "I'm not telling you to stop waiting," she said quickly. I don't want that. I'm trying to tell you that I see it, what I'm asking of you. and I see it. I know you do, I said. And I'm working on being the person who comes back, she said, not just the person who goes. I held the phone, and outside my window the city was doing its ordinary night things, and I was in the middle of the best and hardest conversation I had had in years. Take your time, I said. Don't let me take too much of it, she said. I'll tell you, I said. If it's too much, I'll tell you. Okay, she said. Then softly, thank you. For what? For being you, she said. The specific particular way you are, which I have been insufficiently clear about appreciating. I smiled. She couldn't see it. Get some sleep, I said. Working on it, she said. Good night, Joan. Good night, Mila. She hung up, and I sat with the dial tone that wasn't there anymore, and the weight that was mine to carry for now, and the knowledge, the clear, real, not pretending knowledge, that she was somewhere on the other end of a phone call that mattered, carrying her own version of this weight, and that it was also real for her, and that real things could be born, and that sometimes the goodbye that costs the most is also the one that makes room for what comes next. Not right now, not with certainty, not with a promise or a timeline or anything as clean as resolution, but with the specific kind of faith that comes from having finally told the truth, from having put the weight down and looked at its shape and said, okay, this is real, this exists. Whatever comes, it existed. I didn't sleep right away, but I lay in the dark without the familiar architecture of pretending, without the box I'd been keeping closed, without the 3 a.m. arithmetic of what I could and couldn't let myself think. I lay in the dark with the true thing, with my name the way she says it, with the park and the creek and the 2 hours at the tea place and all the Thursdays, with something I hadn't found before, the lightness that comes on the other side of finally being honest. Not happy, honest. Not resolved, clear. Clear enough. I closed my eyes. I don't know what October looks like. I don't know what the other side of Boston looks like, or Dallas, or whatever comes after. I don't know if she'll walk back into the volunteer center on a Thursday in November, and we'll sort cans side by side, and the world will pick up somewhere manageable. I don't know if it'll be harder than that, or simpler or something I can't predict. What I know is this. I stopped pretending. That's the thing that changed. Not the circumstances. The circumstances are still complicated. The timing is still imperfect. The distance is still real. But I'm not carrying a secret from myself anymore. And that's a different kind of life than the one I was living 6 months ago. Not better in the way of easier, but better in the way of true. I learned something in the park in July, on a bench by the creek in the near dark, sitting next to the person I love and saying so, and then driving home alone. That the love is real, regardless of what happens to it. That I can feel the full size of it without being destroyed by it. That I can put the weight down and pick it back up, and it doesn't have to hide for me to survive. Mila Hargrove is the richest woman in Claremont, Ohio, and she told me, in an empty conference room on a Tuesday night in September, that she was working on becoming someone who comes back. I believed her, not because I needed to, because she is someone whose word, when she gives it, she gives completely, because I have watched her over 8 months, across Thursday evenings and tea place hours and dark sky parks, and I know what she looks like when she means something. She meant it, so I'm here, still running 3 miles, still doing the job well, still going to book club with Rachel and visiting my mother in Columbus, and carrying the real weight, the honest weight, the weight that has the specific shape of something true. It's enough for right now, and sometimes, more often than it should be, maybe, given how uncertain everything still is, I find myself thinking about a bench by a creek, and the dark blue sky, and the sound of the city going quiet, and I think, that was real. We were real. Whatever comes next, that moment already happened. That's not nothing. That's everything. If this story found you somewhere in the middle of your own unnamed thing, write Saudade in the comments. I'll know you made it to the end. And if you want another story that stays with you, the next one is already waiting on your screen. Take care of yourself, and thank you for being here. If you want to hear uncensored, too hot for YouTube stories, check out my Patreon in the description.